Everything you've heard about Japan is wrong. It's supposed to be a high-tech wonderland of the future, and its population is shrinking because young people are too obsessed with anime to date. Both of those are lies. The truth is much darker. Japan is actually an insolvent business model. For a 30-year-old in Tokyo today, having a child isn't just a beautiful milestone, it can also trigger serious financial collapse. And the terrifying part? The exact same financial trap is already closing around the United States. Across the world, modern societies operate on a simple but fundamental principle. The larger working-age population helps to support the smaller retired population. Workers pay taxes, fund pensions, and support healthcare systems. Then when they get older, the next generation does the same for them. It's a deal that works, as long as there are enough younger working-age people to cover the costs. That's where Japan has a problem. The country is slowly but surely marching toward an unprecedented 1-to-1 dependency ratio. It's becoming a state where one tax-paying worker is expected to financially carry one retired citizen. It is not sustainable. And yet, that is where Japan is heading. Why? Well, the country has the oldest population on the planet, with close to 30% of the population being age 65 or above. Japan is also home to a world record number of centenarians, with around 99,000 people having blown out their 100 candles. By 2036, it's estimated the elderly will represent a full third of the population. This didn't happen overnight. It is the inevitable result of decades of slow, inescapable societal change. Birth rates have been falling for years. Meanwhile, life expectancy continues to rise. That means with every passing year, the number of retirees rises too. The pressure falls on the workers. One of the ways economists track that pressure is via something called the national burden rate. It's calculated by combining the amount of taxes and Social Security contributions paid by society. Back in the mid-1970s, the burden was around 25% of national income. By the late 1990s, it had risen to approximately 36%. Today, it sits around 46%. This effectively means that Japan's total tax revenues represent almost half of the national income generated by the economy. Imagine a Tokyo worker on a 10-hour shift. With the current burden rate, it can start to feel like almost half of that shift is effectively absorbed by taxation. It is only in the second half of that shift that they actually start earning enough to buy food, let alone worry about paying their rent or energy bills. The money doesn't disappear, of course. It gets redistributed to fund defense, schools, pensions, healthcare, and the wider network of public services that keep a modern society running. But strip all that away and you're looking at a constant balancing act between what an individual produces in a day and what the collective demands to sustain itself. In short, Japan's entire national budget has stopped functioning as an engine for public investment or positive growth. It is now a state-sanctioned vacuum. It is sucking away the wealth of the young to maintain a safety net for the elderly, and that net is only going to become bigger in the years to come. But if the math is this bad, why aren't young people fighting back? Faced with such a frightening financial future, you might expect the younger generations of Japan to push back, to call for an overhaul of the entire economy. That's not happening. Not because of compliance or apathy, because of societal paralysis. Japan's young people are trapped. They're stuck in a corporate machine that punishes them for trying to start a life. To understand this, we have to look at the real reason Japan's birth rates have fallen so sharply. Because the truth is very different from the typical narrative. Western commentators have for years now attributed Japan's population problems to some sort of cultural defect among the younger generations. They say that the young people don't want relationships anymore. They've become isolated, addicted to technology, lost in the worlds of anime and video games. They prefer the love of digital avatars over real people. There's even a name for it: herbivore-type men. It's an entire generation of young Japanese males who have no interest in sex, dating, or real human relationships. This narrative is patronizing and factually wrong. The data proves it. Surveys show that 80% of single Japanese people want to marry. Many spend hours on dating apps every day, desperate to find the one for them. The desire for genuine companionship, connection, and a traditional family life hasn't vanished. It's not been replaced by virtual worlds and digital avatars. It has, however, been brutally suppressed by an insurmountable financial gauntlet known as the marriage trap. And that trap was set in the 1990s. Before that point, the country seemed to be on a high-speed highway to success. Stock markets soared, property prices performed well, and companies offered stable lifetime employment to their workers. Their futures were secure. And then the bubble burst. Everything changed. Growth slowed, stocks collapsed, and corporations began to rewrite the rules of the job market, all to protect their profits. A growing share of workers were forced into temporary, contract, or part-time positions, becoming part of the so-called precariat class. These roles didn't just pay less and offer fewer benefits. They also didn't provide the security and stability that people needed to plan their futures. Older generations didn't have that problem. They knew their futures were secure, so they were getting married and having kids. Younger people, however, were suddenly struggling to land a stable job. There is an unwritten rule in Japan that men are expected to earn around 3 million yen or $20,000 a year minimum before they can marry. Yet, statistics show that up to 60% of single men in their early 20s earn less than that. They're locked out of getting married, becoming fathers, and living the lives they want, the same lives their parents and grandparents were allowed to live. To make matters worse, even if a couple manages to clear that financial hurdle of marriage, the corporate structure is waiting to destroy the mother's career. The very moment a married Japanese woman decides to have a child, her professional life is thrown into the economic meat grinder. If you map the female participation in the Japanese job market on a chart, it forms a clear inverted U shape. Women's workforce participation rises in the early stages of adulthood before taking a sudden nosedive during their child-rearing years, which often fall into their early 30s. Behind that, there's an even darker truth. Many women who leave stable full-time jobs to raise their kids encounter numerous difficulties when trying to return to a similar standard of employment afterward. Statistics suggest that half of those in their 30s and 40s are classified as non-regular employees, stuck in part-time or contract roles with zero job security. Many of these women still carry out essential corporate labor but receive a fraction of the pay of their childless or male colleagues. There's little chance of bonuses, retirement contributions, or other benefits. What's more, they can be fired or let go with only minimal notice. This in turn creates a permanent, gendered underclass of mothers who are economically cannibalized the very moment they decide to bring a child into the world. For many, it's a lifelong ambition or unique dream to become a parent. But that dream is swiftly turning into a financial nightmare. And it gets worse. While there's been some progress in certain areas of Japanese society, large parts of the company's culture continue to operate according to the 1970s-style beliefs. Men get up, go to work, and provide for their families while working their way up the company ladder. Meanwhile, the stay-at-home wives take care of their domestic tasks. Ambitious professional women don't fit into that outdated vision and are unfairly punished because of that. Some are even bullied right out of their offices in a practice known as matahara, or maternity harassment. It's a disturbingly common trend of pregnant women being mistreated, demoted, intimidated, left out of important projects. They're even pressured to quit their jobs purely because they're seen as less useful and valuable to the corporate cause. This system effectively forces a choice on modern Japanese women. You can have a paycheck or you can have a baby, but you can't have both. Faced with this impossible equation, millions of women are making not just the logical, but for many, only choice. They're going for the paycheck. They're preserving their financial futures and sacrificing their familial ambitions in the bargain. But this system doesn't just break the people, it is now physically breaking the country's infrastructure too. Japan's population collapse isn't just visible in the data. It doesn't just show itself in fertility charts and population pyramids. It can be seen across the country in the form of abandoned properties and half-finished homes. Data from 2024 details the astonishing depth of the country's akiya, or abandoned house crisis. An eye-watering 9 million homes across Japan lie vacant today. That's 14% of the nation's residential architecture, not just empty, but in many cases physically falling apart. To put those numbers into perspective, 9 million abandoned houses are enough to provide a home for every man, woman, and child living in New York City. In a healthy capitalist economy, real estate is supposed to be the ultimate wealth builder. It's what people work toward their whole lives. Younger generations dream of the day they become homeowners. Historic trends from around the globe have almost always shown houses gaining value as time goes by. People invest in them, pay off their mortgages, and pass their properties down to their children, providing them with a powerful economic stepping stone. In Japan, the system has been turned on its head. There are fewer and fewer young families actually willing to purchase these properties. Even those who inherit abandoned homes from elderly relatives are starting to see them more as liabilities than assets. There are several reasons for this. For starters, because of strict property laws across Japan, demolition costs are astronomical. So even if people don't want to live in an inherited home, they don't want to cover the cost of getting rid of it either. And then there's the tax issue. Properties are taxed even if no one is living in them. If a Tokyo businessman inherits an old home from his deceased parents, he is suddenly having to cope with even more of his money being taken by the state. It's even reaching the point where people are actively hiding from tax authorities or refusing to claim properties they're supposed to inherit. They don't want to be burdened with an asset that drains what little wealth they have and offers no real value in return. As a result, entire neighborhoods are becoming financial dead zones. They're filled with crumbling structures nobody wants to live in, pay for, or even tear down. But that's not the only thing crumbling. For decades, Japan earned a reputation for overwork. Workers were compelled to put in endless hours of overtime, spending late nights at the office before long commutes back home. Truck drivers traveled for days on end with only the tiniest of breaks. Construction workers labored until they could no longer stand, and it wasn't uncommon to see white-collar workers falling asleep on train station floors. This put their minds and bodies under immense pressure, leading to some quite literally dying on the job. It was a phenomenon known as karoshi, occupation-related sudden death. It happens all over the globe, but it has been particularly prevalent in Japan and other Asian nations over the years. Recognizing the growing problem, the Japanese government implemented strict caps on the legal overtime hours in industries like logistics and construction. It was trying to do the right thing, it was trying to save lives, but it created a whole new problem in the process. The reason so many workers had been putting in those excessive amounts of hours was that it was the only way to keep the country's economy moving. It wasn't fair or ethical, but it was the backbone of the nation's logistics. The new caps broke that bone. With truck drivers restricted to more humane hours, the transportation sector instantly ran out of manpower. This led to a 14% shortfall in delivery capacity by 2024, which is projected to rise to 34% by 2030. And so a new phenomenon has arrived, a social shortage. It means even wealthy individuals with fancy homes and plenty of money in their bank accounts aren't able to buy goods. Why? Because the people aren't there to actually get those goods from point A to point B. The workers who are responsible for fulfilling orders in warehouses, loading pallets, and driving trucks across the country have vanished. One of the ways that many developed countries would and have responded to crises like these would be relying on immigration, bringing in more workers from other countries to fill in the gaps in their logistics and supply chains. For years, Japan refused to do that. Fiercely insular, the country has a noticeably ethnically homogeneous society, with foreign workers making up only a small fraction of the full population. But eventually, the nation relented. Now it's opening up to immigration. It's also turning to another drastic option: machines. But this is a fatal miscalculation. Throughout modern history, Japan has often been painted as an almost futuristic society, light years ahead of other nations around the world. Because of this, when discussing the country's population problems with labor issues, many observers have come to the same conclusion: the robots will fix everything. It sounds simple. All Japan has to do is deploy machines to take on the tasks that the country's population isn't able to complete. With the rise of AI and more powerful automation, it shouldn't be that hard for Tokyo to implement it. For a long time, the country's government bought into that idea. Walk into Japanese hospitals, convenience stores, hotels, and logistics warehouses, and you'll see the results of their investments. Robots are everywhere, from automated checkouts to robotic arm sorters to care bots to help the elderly and infirm patients in and out of their beds. But this blind belief that robots can replace the country's missing workers overlooks something crucial. Yes, robots can produce goods, but they can't consume them. They can optimize supply chains and streamline logistics. They can solve the supply collapse of the country's economy. But that's only half of the problem, because robots don't buy homes or cars. They don't go out for dinner, buy clothes, sign up for gym subscriptions, or contribute to consumer economies. For that, you need demand. And for demand, you need people. Japan is running out of those people, and they're speeding straight toward a devastating demand collapse as a consequence. And it all boils down to the fundamentals of capitalism. Economies can't function on production alone. They need consumption to balance it out. You can automate on one side, but you can't automate consumers. When a country fails to support its younger generations, it doesn't just lose a workforce, it loses a market. Again, the Japanese government has tried to fix this issue, and again, it followed the wrong path. It has reportedly poured billions of dollars into the likes of dating apps, corporate matchmaking systems, and stipends for those who start families. But those programs are failing. The majority of young Japanese people report utter exhaustion when trying to find a partner. Millions of working-age men and women aren't interested in any temporary incentives or one-off payments that the government throws their way because they can see the bigger picture. They're looking straight down the barrel of an economic system that has been rigged against them. The demand collapse isn't just a domestic issue, it is rooted in a generational theft that is destroying the nation's economic engine, and it cannibalized an entire generation. The real issue comes down to a system that prioritizes protecting the wealth and stability of older generations at the direct expense of investment in younger generations. Records show that Japanese households sit on a truly staggering mountain of financial assets, worth over 2.2 quadrillion yen, or more than $14 trillion. Unfortunately, for those in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, an enormous percentage of that wealth is hoarded by retirees and senior citizens aged 65 and above. They were the lucky ones living through the almost miraculous post-war period that allowed them to amass enormous amounts of capital. They could invest in real estate and build up their pension pots, and today much of that money sits stagnant, with billions upon billions of yen stuffed away in safes or zero-interest bank accounts. It is dead money. It's not being reinvested into the economy, it's not being used to fund startups and ventures, it's not being passed down to children who are ready to settle down and start families either. In turn, Japan's younger generations are increasingly relying on a drastic financial lifeline, a lifeline that extends far beyond the borders of their nation. Statistics show that many young Japanese people are sending what capital they have out of the country. They are ignoring domestic stocks and savings accounts in favor of global index funds, foreign equity markets, and U.S. tech stocks. It's a move that makes a lot of sense. These people realize that their country is not going to give them the money they need to live the lives they want. They have to make more of every yen that they get. Investing in a shrinking domestic market with a collapsing population is a one-way ticket to wealth loss. By investing abroad, they're hoping to get the returns they need to survive and maybe someday to thrive. It might work for these individuals, but it is catastrophe for the collective. Japan's domestic economy has been stagnating because the old money won't move and the young money is rushing for the exits. But if you think that this is just a fascinating tragedy happening on an island in the Pacific, you might want to take a look at your own bank account, because your future is already Japanese. For years, people saw Japan as an outlier, a one-off, a curiosity, an isolated island nation facing its own unusual but exclusive problems. And they were wrong. Tokyo's crisis is a blueprint. It's a 20-year preview of the very same economic cliff that the entire developed world is getting closer to with every passing year. Japan was just the first one to take the jump. It's the same economic trap, the same generational wealth hoardings, and the same corporate failings that can be seen in other countries across the globe, from North America to Europe. Stats show that many Western nations like the US, Canada, and the United Kingdom are experiencing birth rates far below the replacement level of 2.1 per person. The West has managed to stave off its structural decay for now through immigration. Countries have imported millions of foreign workers to prop up their labor forces, take on low-wage work, and pay into pensions and social security systems. But immigration is a band-aid. It's a patch that covers the problem, but it doesn't erase it. As developing nations industrialize, their birth rates too are beginning to decline. The global talent pool is shrinking as a result, and the competition for workers will reach record heights. Then countries like the US too will begin to face the same demand collapse that Tokyo has suffered. The very same consequences hollowing out Tokyo's economy will collide with Western markets, and when the fundamental rule of capitalism is broken, even the strongest economies and supply chains will fail. The social shortage will extend thousands of miles beyond Tokyo's borders. It'll become a harrowing reality, leading to delays, disruption, and unprecedented inflation. This isn't just a Japanese problem, it is coming for all of us. Tokyo's young people aren't broken. They're just the first to realize the long-standing social deal is no longer fair. They're the guinea pigs, but the experiment is about to roll out on a global scale. The population crisis isn't Japan's only problem. They're also standing at the edge of a financial cliff, and the effects won't stay on its shores. Find out the global impact in It's Not Oil You Should Be Watching, It's Japan, or watch this video.